All right, so this entire video is just a very brief, straightforward Gorilla tutorial on how to use Suno, the workflow that I use. I don't know, we consider it evidence or anecdote for the debate for AI music and whether it's creativity or not. I have no horse in that race. For me, it's a writing exercise, but I got a bunch of people that are asking about how this process works and what would be useful to a musician. We'll figure that out. But I got a few minutes here. I'm going to slap this together so you can kind of follow along, and we'll just kind of work through it here real quick. So you go to any AI creation tool like Suno or something similar. There's a couple other ones, and they pretty much generally have the same premise, right? We can start with writing some lyrics. And if you look on the screen here, you're going to see my particular workspace, which is your default workspace. You can create a lot of different ones, whatever. We can start with writing some lyrics, and we'll just think of something here real quick. I usually start with a chorus, and there's two things you're going to have to keep tabs on. In most of these tools, you have tags, which will be brackets, like chorus, right? And oops, I don't know if I spelled correctly. Chorus, there we go. So we have chorus, and we can think of something here. I'm looking around my room here. I've got a game controller, some smoked Cheez-Its, an EpiPen, whatever. Let's just say the merriment, with laughter, and lift the soul. Cry out with joy. The voice of the soul. There is the life. Merriment is in sight. Whatever. We'll just slap something together. Your creativity will come and go as it is, right? And you can start with that, and usually you'll have verse, chorus, or something to that extent. We won't get into music theory or anything like that just yet, but verse, this is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it. All right, there, we have a verse, we have a chorus. And what we can do, let's expand this window out here just a little bit, is just for learning purposes, we'll do that 3 times there, right? Now, a couple things that I'll point out, and there's a difference between if you're actually a musician, you're dealing with bars and timing and all that kind of stuff. You have to understand that this is more sculpture, and let's use actually MS Paint here to really illustrate this. File new, and I need this bigger. Why is this so tiny? Why is it so tiny? File, image properties, just like 1024 by 1024. Good grief, Microsoft, how can you ruin Paint? All right, so we have a big square here, and what this is this is the AI's training data. It's a model. All the songs that it's been trained on. And there's a debate on, the validity of the training data. And I have no horse in that race. It's a writing exercise for me. But let's just visualize this in a way that we can understand. That'll make it a little bit easier. The song that we want to make that's in our head, let's say it's just a circle, right? It's a particular genre. It's a particular theme. It's a particular sound, right? Well, what we're doing when we add these keywords, and I'll bring this up here again, down here in the style section, let's just say rock, right? So we're telling the AI that we want to focus on rock music, which in its model data might be a quarter of its data, right? So now what we're doing, so the way I look at working with AI, it's not an additive form of art like painting, right, where you're applying something to a blank canvas. It is considerably more in the realm of pottery and sculpture, where we're actually chipping away at something. The statue of David was in that block of marble. We had to go find it. And Michelangelo, I think, is the one that did that one. He's chipping away. He's taking away pieces of the marble to reveal the structure underneath it as the statue that's in his mind. That's what you're doing with AI. The training data is just a big chunk of marble. And what we're doing with the keywords is chipping away and excluding things. It's not an additive process, it's an exclusive process, or a subtractive process, as they probably would say. So what we do is we add tasks, and we add tags, and we're slowly eliminating parts over and over until we can get into roughly the area that we want. And we'll use blue here. And maybe it'll generate this song here, and it'll generate this song here. And the more, and we're like, okay, that's fine, but you know what? I don't want a lot of symbols, so I can exclude those. And then it will generate a couple more. And eventually we can kind of guide it. It's almost herding the AI engine to where we want to go. Now, is that a creative process or not? I'm not into that debate. You guys can sort that out. But so right now, if we come back over to this tool here, and it's, well, my picture is way in the way here, so let me just move this over here. Right. And now we've got some generic lyrics here. And we start with rock. Now, for me, the reason I do this has nothing to do with music. All right, I'm a writer by nature. I used to be a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons for about 20 years. To me, the lyric box that you see over here, that's like writing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, right? What I'm going to send the players off to do, right? I've got the villains, I've got the plot, I've got all of those pieces. But for me, the interesting thing is, that's why I'm not an author or a novelist per se. I'm more interested in the interaction with the players, right? Well, I'm old and I don't have time to really do that anymore. But this gives me that itch, because now this little style box down here, and Suno itself, but the style box here, that's the players that are at the table. I don't know what rock is going to do with these lyrics. That's the interesting part for me. I could care less about the end product. That's really kind of just a nice bonus, right? So we can come down here and you can do a whole bunch of different things here. We're just going to call this, I don't know, tutorial demo 1. And I always throw WIP on the end of it, work in progress, right? And now I can hit create. And what this is doing now is it's taking internally, I've read a couple of the papers on the various techniques of like LLM models and diffusion and stuff like that. It's probably taking the syllable count in each of these lines, starting that as a baseline, then finding out, okay, which musical timings usually work best with these type of syllable counts, and then kind of work through that. And this is what I call the ping pong phase, right? I like, the challenge for me for writing is writing lyrics that are independent of a particular genre or even tempo, right? So I don't know what rock is going to do. Rock is just a tag. It doesn't really mean anything. What it is it's a collection of metadata. Like most rock songs are in 4 particular chords. Axis of Awesome made fun of that a long time ago. It might have this particular tempo and timings and things like that. This is the most statistical likely instrumentation that's going to go through that, and it's making a guess, right? So now I've got 2 versions. It'll always generate 2. I don't know if that's to burn through credits more quickly or what. But now we've got this thing. We can listen to it.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist. But if we give it time,
can do at this point, right, is we can say, okay, now given the rock genre, do those lyrics work? And some of the sentences and the phrases that you have might be too long and they might be too short. Or you might realize, I don't want a 3-line verse, I want to go like a 5-line verse. Now, for music professionals and stuff that are used to that, you've got your bars and your tempos and things like that. You have a lot more in your toolkit to work with. This is really taking a bucket of dice and rolling it out and deciding, based off of that where you're starting. It's probably a very good starting point, right? And we have a second version of the track. Right up here. Now for me, for my rock taste, rock, it's too noisy. I don't like a lot of it. I'm not a big slave rating.
This is a convoluted verse about.
See, I don't like how it drops down like that and things like that. So, you'll end up taking them and you'll be like, I'm send that to the trash, whatever. Move to the trash. You move on. And then you ping pong back to the verse. But what I like to do, again, the interesting thing for me is we've written those, and let's say they work for rock, right? But what happens if I change this to folk? And hit create. And it's going to start churning on that. But now we've completely changed genres. We've completely changed the keywords and the tempos, right? If we go back to our little diagram here, right? Maybe this was the rock area. Now all of a sudden we're like, nah, I want to go completely in the completely different direction, like way over here. And we've picked folk. And now it's got this toolkit of different tempos, songs, instrumentation, lyrics, vocals, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm always interested in the difference between the two. And that's what I do when I'm bored, right? I have a whole series of lyrics and stuff that are just sitting there. And if it's a slow day at work, I'll generate 50 different songs and just move on with my day. And then I'll play them in the background. And that's all it is to me. I'm more interested in the contrast. So now the fun part for me is here's the folk version.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time. The merriment of laughter can lift the soul, cry out with joy the voice of the soul. Mary is the light. Merriment is in sight.
So there we go, right? We've got two completely juxtaposed genres, right? I can come down here and let's slap in dubstep. Screw it, why not? Dubstep. Hit generate, or create in this case. And it's going to go off to do that. And then what I can do is I can bounce back. But now here's a couple things that I've noticed. In music theory, at least as far as I've been able to research, you have different components like a bridge. Every time you introduce a tag, it's almost like it allows the AI to make a change. Now, a lot of contemporary music, and a lot of it's trash, but let's be honest, you have different key changes, right? Changing into a different key and things like that. Well, the AI is pretty stupid. It's going to kind of just cruise down unless you give it some more tools, right? Just like this box, in our little demonstration here, every keyword is either going to constrain it or give it more tools to work with. I tend to use a bridge not as a lyrical bridge, right, which would be conventionally in musical theory, but it's an excuse for the AI engine to change things. So I can say bridge, I don't know, walking on water is hard, but walking on air is impossible. There. So what does that do? Absolutely nothing technically. But what will happen is, depending on the genre and the tags that we put down here, bridge will mean something different if it's dubstep than it is if it was folk. It's contextual. It all depends on what's going on, because in this box of keywords, for instance, right here's folk over here. Well, if dubstep's over here, a dubstep bridge is going to behave differently than a bridge for a folk and a bridge for a rock and a bridge for anything else based on how they interplay. It's kind of how a neural network kind of works, is you'd have a bunch of different nodes, and then depending on how those line up, right, can end up with very widely different results depending on how they interplay. So it's obviously it's complicated, and you'd have to really do a lot of research and understand that. But in general, the more keywords, like verse to dubstep versus verse to folk, brings different behaviors. So it's like adding them up together, and the difference is very substantial. So here's our dubstep version. But we're intentionally using a single word just to illustrate a couple things. And that gives us a kind of a basis to understand how.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time. The merriment of laughter can lift the soul.
Notice it just
cry out with
skipped the
joy,
bridge.
the voice of the soul.
Dubstep.
Merry is the life, merriment is inside.
Now you guys figured out that this is probably appropriate. So, and again, as far as the creativity debate goes, you're working with the AI. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a tool in the sense that, like a hammer, it's not that kind of a tool. It's a collaborative tool, right? It makes its own decision. You make your decisions, and you have to kind of find the compromises and negotiate, right? It's a negotiable tool, if that makes any sense. But so there we are, and we have a bunch of more tracks. We can just move to the trash. But now let's say we want to narrow down. We like the rock genre, right? Well, what kind of rock? I mean, we can go with progressive rock. And you'll notice down at the bottom here, it has a bunch of suggestions and random things, right? You could say progressive rock. I'm much more a tag-based person. Multi-layered, sure. Deep vocal, why not? Let's take, sure, let's throw 108 beat per minute in there. And let's say bass and drums, right? All of those tags will drastically change its behavior in the long term. So now the question is, again, like a sculptor, every one of these tags we put down here is restricting what is already there. Again, back to this model, there's all the training data that it has. All of that is already there. It's just that as we add tags, we're sectioning off. Kind of like that, it used to be a game, I think it was called Quicks or something, right? Where you're constantly sectioning off parts of it, and then you're just slowly narrowing down with each and every tag that you put in. You're kind of binding the AI's ability to be flexible, which is fine. It's a subtractive process versus an additive process. And eventually you can kind of get it within a box or a region. So the question, I guess, in the debate of whether it's creative or not, it's creative. The question is how much creativity is there to take a random song, let's say, and get it into this one tiny box that you want. That's really what you're kind of doing. And you might get 5, 6 versions, and that's your little box. I like to compare different boxes. I'll do a rock over here, and then I'll be like, hey, let's do folk. Kind of aim for like an Enya meets, I don't know, Nora Jones on the set of Beetlejuice. I don't know, whatever. And then we get a set of songs over here, and we got a set of songs over here. That's kind of the sculpting process of it, if you will. So there we are, and we can go with this, and we can go, all right, and let's get our prog rock version of it. And again, I suppose the debate is with the style, I don't have direct control, which again, for me, as I've explained, this is more Dungeons and Dragons than music for me. Now I've brought to the Dungeons and Dragons table for me a player named Progressive Rock, another player named Multi-Layer, and another player named Deep Vocal, and I get to see how they play out the campaign. And after a few minutes, here we go. Right? Same campaign, same adventure, same story. But now I've got the interplay of all these different players. Now, is that creative or not? I have no horse in that race. I really don't. The reason I post this stuff on YouTube is because it's fun.
About a song that doesn't exist. Will if we give it
Now the question is,
time?
how's it going to behave rich?
Walking on water is hard, but walking on air is impossible. The merriment of laughter can lift the soul. Cry out with joy, the voice of the soul. Mary is the light. Marin is inside. This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist. But will it
So now we've narrowed down, we've kind of corralled the AI to do certain things, right? And now the question is do we want to go continue down this way? Does it really work as a prog rock song, or would it work better as, I don't know, let's go with industrial metal, right? The question is, again, is what I'm doing a creative process? Then more importantly, is what is the extent of that creative process? And that's a debate that I'm not qualified to weigh in one way or the other. So it is what it is, right? And you can continue to kind of keep whittling through, trying to find different, areas. And then with these tags, within, let's say with this verse here, I could say duet. Let's say female backing vocals, right? What does that mean to the AI? Absolutely nothing. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of numbers. It has no context of what female backing vocals actually means. What it does have is training data where somebody said that's what female backing vocals sounds like. And the AI is going to determine, based off of the style that we've put down here, how many industrial metal songs are out there that have a duet and female backing vocals to draw off of, right? If there's no such thing in its training data, it's just going to ignore it, right? It has no way to just invent something out of thin air. I got great news for you musicians. You're not going extinct. This isn't going to replace you. But what it will do, what we've just done in this video, for instance, is had 18 different sessions, basically, with no band setup time, no need to drag out different instruments, and prototype things quite rapidly before we ever have to actually invite a bunch of people in. So from a cost-cutting standpoint, it's going to save a lot of headaches and a lot of bullshit. So, yay, right? Now, is there going to be impacts to creativity? I don't know. You gave a Grammy to Britney Spears and Jessica Simpson and her sister, Ashley Simpson. They had recording contracts. I think AI is the least of your concerns when it comes to the downfall of music, right? I can think of a lot of really shitty music out there that's done by human beings, so I think it's probably more an issue of sifting through it, finding the people that have good talent, and probably a little less ditty parties to get your foot in the door. Just saying. I think you got bigger problems than just AI. I remember, I'm old enough. I'm an old shit. I remember when people were complaining about Kraftwerk's making artists go extinct because they were using synthesizers. You bitched about Wendy Carlos, you bitched about Moog, you bitched about Korg, you bitched about Roland, and you're still here. Take a breath. You'll be fine. The vast majority of you ain't making any money anyway, so right now it's just a bunch of one percenters complaining about the fact that there might be a threat to their money. The guy playing your county fair still has a full-time job. So I think you'll be fine. Relax. Just, I'm not coming for your job. I have no concern for that. So now we've got this industrial method. Find if it works. We can keep adding more tags. We can keep tuning and vetting through various things. We can also do other things that it doesn't interest me at all. But you could say, now with the style descriptions, by the way, again, this is basically like LLM and Chat GPT and stuff like that, and tokenizing the style description. You can be very natural language with it, like a song that captures the feeling of a sunrise after a long night of grieving. You can do that. You just hit create. And what basically happens is that style description is going to get put through very different techniques, neural networks and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff. And it's going to process that regardless. You can be as natural language as you want. You could be, I mean, you can hit a button. They have a little button down here, which is just a kicker. If you wrote a bunch of tags, it will just spit out, right? And here we are. There's the version.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time. Walking on water is hard, but walking on
AI
air
enough flexibility to say, oh, I can pitch up
is
here.
impossible. The merriment leper can lift the soul, cry out with joy, the voice of the soul. Mary is the light,
Flashbacks to one of the shows.
merriment is inside.
Here's where we hit that verse, duet, female backing vocals
This
part.
is a convoluted verse
Notice it's
about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time.
Right, so
The
we get to
merriment of
this.
laughter can lift the soul.
Now notice it's slipping a little bit of backing vocal in there, and we got another version up here. We can just jump forward.
Cry out with joy, the voice of the soul. Merriment is inside.
So we come to that duet. And again, it's interesting to me to see the changes between genre, but it isn't there. But that's part of the process, right? You're
This is
sitting
a
with the
convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist.
again, you get no
Will
duet, no backing. But here's the thing. We also didn't put duet in the style. So if we come down here to the style and we say duet, female backing vocals, remember, if we look at this kind of this theoretical diagram that we have here, right, if we don't put duet in here in the style section, we're excluding that already, right? It might randomly pick it, but unless we explicitly tell it that that's what we're looking for, we're really depriving the AI a lot of tools to work with. So regardless of the fact that we put duet, female, and backing vocals up here in the lyrics section, that's like saying, yeah, here's a bunch of Phillips screws to turn, but you don't have a screwdriver. You got to come down to the style description and actually give it the tools necessary to meet the goals that you want it to. So again, we can trash these, and we'll just hit create again. And there's other advanced options and stuff like that, and you can weirdness and style influence. I don't really use that all that much, but and again, depending on what platform you're using, you're going to have a wide variety of different things that come out of this. So here we are.
exist, but will if we give it time.
Okay,
Walking on water is hard, but walking on air is
Here's your duets. Here's your
impossible.
backing vocals.
The merriment of laughter can lift the soul. Cry out with joy, the voice of the soul.
Yes, I am one of those people that fell asleep with an organ too. My apologies. Love our music, doesn't sleep.
Is inside.
Right. Now remember, every time we switch tags, it gives the AI a little bit of flexibility. Right? The way to put interludes and stuff like that.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time.
Again, totally ignore
The
it.
merriment of laughter
But that puts the duet with backing vocals of course. So again, hit and miss. If you're a musician, you have much more control over that. Even if you have like a digital audio workstation, you could do a couple different tracks and you could layer them yourself. And I mean, it's not a substitute, but it will give you a starting point, right? And we can come over here to the second one I created.
But will if we give it time.
That's 20 seconds in.
Walking on water is hard, but walking on air is impossible.
Now that's a good example right there, is that sentence is too long with this particular timing and structure. So the question is, walking on water is hard. We could hit enter here, bring it down a line, put a break in there, but walking on the air, and then we could say, the dream is impossible. Is my home in the night to me. There, whatever. Right, and then you can just revise it, drop two more, and then keep going through, right? And you can work through that process and get to wherever you're planning on getting to, right? Depends on how creative you are and what you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're just trying to slap something together to back into the documentary, who cares, right? Now I've given the bridge a little bit more meat and more time.
This is a convoluted verse about a song that doesn't exist, but will if we give it time.
And another thing is if you're a lyricist or a songwriter, I mean, the AI might come up with a cadence and a timing that you never had even considered, right? So it'd be like, hey, well, that pause, I never thought about pausing there and then continuing on. So, I mean, it's a very good way to prototype things early on and then go back and use your traditional set of tools, right?
Walking on water is hard, but walking on air is a dream, is impossible. It's like hope in the night to me.
And there's a revised bridge.
The merriment of laughter can lift the soul. Cry out with joy, the voice of the soul. Merry is the light. Merriment is inside.
Right, so there we go. You know, you've got the basics down, and it's just improving that. Now, how many tags are there that you can work with? Thousands. For me, just to keep track of things, right? Here's my documents and lyrics folders, and here's the stuff I'm working on, right? But I have something here which is called the family. And what the family is collections of tags. And if anybody's looked at my YouTube channel, you'll see there's a meta story going on with the music. Whereas there's AIs that are quote-unquote making the music, right? I write the lyrics and I give them to fictional AI characters like Lynn. Well, all that Lynn really is, if you look at the screen, is just a collection of tags I put down in the style section. So when Lynn and, let's say, Gareth make a song, all I'm doing is I'm just taking both of these tags and just copying them in. That's how I keep it organized in my head, right? There's Martin, Lynn's brother, and that way it allows me to kind of give a little bit of context. So if you're a fan of something like Westworld, these are the reveries, right? Or if you're Blade Runner, these are the fake memories implanted into Rachel, just to give it a little bit more context. It's me, it's just a way to organize things. But then there's all sorts of tags, and I'll slowly scroll through these. These are just things I've copied and pasted over time to kind of get a feel for that, right? These are things I've gotten from like Reddit and posts and things like that. And I do like this one. This one I found here is, oh my God, just I understand a lot of musicians' aversion to AI music because there's two things when you're learning to be a writer. Purple prose is a term you'll hear a lot, and that is H.P. Lovecraft levels of absurd detail and flourish to things, right? Just start with the simplest and stuff. But there are a lot of crappy, and it's not even AI, but there's a lot of over things done. Like the worst dumping ground for me is Christian rock. I swear you do not need to say Jesus every other word, and you do not need to have praise every third word, and Lord every sixth word, right? There's a lot of stuff in there that you could use instead. Just, it's a dumping ground, and AI, it was long before AI ever came along, so you can't blame AI for it. But there are a lot of things that you probably should avoid just because they're overused. And that's a big chunk of them right here. And I always do like a find and search periodically. Coming down, again, I'm scrolling through this just so people can pause the video a little bit here. Again, I have no script or anything like this. I'm actually making lunch upstairs in an air fryer, but I figure I could slap this together while that's doing. So you have structure tags, and these are the kind of the important ones. You have intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, hook. Hook, the problem with that is if you specify something in a lot of AI engines as a hook, it will overuse it and beat it to death. I do not like using that tag, but give it a try. I mean, things are always changing and evolving. Outro was almost kind of a requirement in Suno for version 4 of the engine because it would never finish a song correctly, but it's gotten better with 4.5, so Outro and spoken word together is pretty good if you want to have just, a spoken word ending to it, like, and then they all died, right? There's moods, sad verse, happy chorus. You can put additional words in the tags because, again, an AI system has no concept of grammar. Quiet arrangement and arrangement, quiet, probably mean the same thing. It's just a token at the end of the day. So instrumentals work good, but again, if you look back at our diagram here, if you box out a bunch of things by adding tags, some of those tags won't apply. Like drop. Drop is very important if it's a dubstep song, right? Not if it's just a classical symphony. There's no concept. There's no data that would show what a drop would be, right? Again, AIs are incredibly stupid. So they don't necessarily understand that, and then they'll just ignore it, right? If it doesn't have any data or anything like that, that's why training data is so important, and there's that whole debate on that. So, but there's guitar solo. I like throwing in periodically just because I like screwing with the AI. I always put drum solo in. Not a lot of songs that have just a dedicated drum solo for that, at least in the training data that they have up to date. So Brass Stab, that one I've played with a couple times. My guilty pleasure is post-war 1940s type music. Andrews Sisters, Boswell Sisters, Bob Crosby and Bing Crosby, that kind of stuff. That's my guilty pleasure. So there is an old jazz. I like instrumental jazz. So, but and then again, more tags come along. These are just some of the ones I've kind of accumulated over time and stuff like that. 808 beats, 909 beats, chill wave synth, dubstep wobbles, wub 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 wub. All that kind of fun stuff. You got Celtic melodies. And again, you can piece them together and just play with it and have fun. it gets expensive. If you think about it, because you can burn through a lot of credits. I think right now my subscription is 2,000 credits, and I'll burn through that in about 3 weeks. But I'm only doing this for 90. Well, originally the plan was to write something every day for 90 days. And then I realized, well, I had a vacation in there, and there's some weekends. So I'm just going to do it until I have 90 songs that I like that I've posted to YouTube, and then I'm going to move on to the short story stuff. I'm cleaning out my closet, which is to my left, of all my old D&D stuff. And I'm going to transcribe all of my old D&D campaigns. I called them, if you're a fan of Dune, Princess Irulan used to have these little blurbs before each chapter. Story interludes, I'd call them. That's what I had. I had a whole bunch of them. In fact, there's a song that I did, which was the Good Doctor campaign, that I turned into a song just as an exercise. And I found there's some pitching. There's no real formalized standard to document this. Some people are thinking JSON, some people are thinking XML. It's kind of hit or miss. It's kind of like wiki language, markup language. So there's a lot to go into. But let's take a look at one of my existing tracks just as we can look here. I've got them in my library. If you're ever on Suno and you come across my stuff and you look back, let's take a look here. I hate their interface, to be honest. Here we go. Shards of 1,000 Lies, Riverboat Cut. This is literally, the tags are in here. I didn't do anything special. Just in how they go. And there's the instrumental outro, for instance. So they're all there. And then you can see the full style up here, which is probably really tiny to see here. Let me see if I can zoom. Yeah, here we go. See, there's the tag. This is the tags that I used to make it. There's nothing interesting in there. I threw Dungeon Synth in there just for shits and giggles to see what it would do. You can throw in words like mystic, ablative, and just see what the AI does with it. That's the fun part of it for me. So, zoom back out here to something sane. So that's really the long and skinny of it. I mean, there's nothing really more complex to it except for playing around with it and trying it out. And then you just burn through credits and figure it out. And then if you find something that you like, then what I tend to do is, from an organizational standpoint, right, it goes into a folder called completed songs. Like, here's all the hours. And there's the different versions and stuff like that. And then I needed to put some backing visuals, right, in the back. Because originally, in this tool called Visi, I was just going to have, just a black background and just this little VU meter kind of a deal here, and then some basic data. I was just going to have it black. And then I did that, and people complained that they couldn't tell the difference between them because they're like, I can't remember which one it is. So I realized very quickly on that you should probably have something in the background, right? And all of that is I just ran to I think this is the focus tool here, and I just generated some random background from AI just based off a prompt, like an empty stage or concert hall, right? That's where I got this picture from. I just generated that just so there's something in the background so you can tell apart, right? Then you put something like this together. It's not terribly hard. There's plenty of tutorials. And then it's file export. And then that ends up in the folder as an MP4. And then that MP4 just comes up to your channel. Where's your dashboard here? And up here it says create upload video. And then that goes in. And then that gets dumped in. And that's the one I just did. Right? And then I keep tabs on all the variants that I've already done. And then as I have time, I do one a day usually, and then I'll post another one, and then fill this out and move on with my day. And then once I'm done with all this, then I'm done. It's, again, I have no interest in the final product as a musician or anything of that nature. It's not. I'm just doing it as a writing exercise because my friend Dave died. So Here's Dave right there. Hi, Dave. Hi, Chief. He passed away. I was supposed to write 3 books that he was going to read when I retired. Well, unfortunately, he had the unfortunate indecency to die before I retired. So that is unfortunate. So, in a way, this is my therapy and this is my penance, right? I should have put more time into getting those songs out of the way and getting the writing done. So that's really where that kind of boils down. Oh, this is. Oh yeah, that's unfortunate. Great. Well, it's good to see the world's still crazy. There's my other one here. There it is. There's the focus one. Get that. And here we are. There's the channel contents there. And that's really, I mean, that's all there is to this. It's not. I just realized I never turned that on. There we go. That's really all there is to it. It's not a terribly complicated solution to work with. It's straightforward. If you want to make just an instrumental song, you can just literally just check this box to instrumental and then do that. That's what this actual. There's this weird track here that says Anvil of Creation World Gem. This is an instrumental track I created. And the reason is I play it while I'm waiting for it to generate the other songs. That's all it is. It's a timing thing. It's 3 minutes and 42 seconds, which is about how long it takes to generate a song. So I thought, well, that's convenient. I'll just hit play, and then I can go off and vacuum or do whatever. And I know when this song is done playing, the tracks that I created earlier are probably done. But here, there's your process. You're good to go. So hopefully this helps out. I mean, it'll contribute to whatever it is for the big discussion about, whether it's creative or not. I don't have much of a horse in the race on that, but for me it's a writing exercise, so it is what it is. But for a couple of the people on Reddit that were like, how do you use this tool and blah blah blah, well, there you go. So knock yourself out. My dinner is ready. I am going to stop recording. Bye bye.